Hello to everyone watching online. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Chiara Monticone. I'm a senior policy analyst at the OECD. So on behalf of the OECD, it's really my pleasure to welcome you all as we kickstart Global Money Week around the world. As you know, Global Money Week is an annual global awareness raising campaign coordinated by the OECD International Network on Financial Education. And this year marks the 14th edition of Global Money Week under the theme Smart Money Talks. During today's launch and during the whole week, we will explore the importance for young people of having smart conversations about money-related matters and the role of financial education in helping them in feeling confident to have those conversations. So in today's launch will be structured in three parts. First of all, we will hear opening remarks from Yasushi Masaki, who is OECD Deputy Secretary General. We will then have the honor of hearing a keynote speech from Professor Anna Maria Luzzardi from Stanford University. She is also the honorary chair of the OECD INFE Research Advisory Group. And finally, we will host an interactive dialogue between policymakers and young people on financial education and their financial well-being, moderated by Claire Barrett, who is consumer editor at the Financial Times. So I would now like to invite OECD Deputy Secretary General Yasushi Masaki to open the event and to launch the 14th edition of Global Money Week. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to me to welcome you today and to officially launch Global Money Week 2026 under this year's theme, Smart Money Talks. This year marks the 14th edition of Global Money Week. The OECD is proud to support Global Money Week through our international network on financial education known as INFE. Over the years, Global Money Week has been a catalyst for action, with over 100 countries around the world advancing a shared objective of ensuring young people have the knowledge, skills, and confidence to make sound financial decisions. In my remarks today, let me make 3 points. First, why this year's theme matters. Second, what the evidence tells us. And third, what we can do together to better support the young people. First, why does this theme matter? Young people's lives are full of financial decisions. Some are small and everyday, tracking spending, saving for a global goal, or managing social pressure without overspending. Others are more complex, using digital financial services, understanding borrowing and risk, or recognizing scams and misinformation online. But money is not always easy to talk about. Attitude towards money are deeply shaped by cultural norms, social expectations, and habits at home. For some young people, discussing money comes naturally, or others it may feel uncomfortable, private, or even stressful. This is why this year's theme, Smart Money Talks, is such a timely theme. Financial literacy, at its core, is not only about awareness, knowledge, and skills. It is also about confidence to ask questions, to seek advice, and to have been open conversation with trusted people, including parents, teachers, and peers. Second, what does the evidence tell us? OECD's 2022 program for international student assessment, the PISA, shows that about half of students reported they enjoy talking about money matters. On average, those students also tended to perform better in financial literacy. This matters because talking about money can help young people reflect, learn, and make more informed choices. At the other end of the spectrum, many young people are navigating an increasingly complex financial environment. They are using online payments, engaging with digital tools, and facing a growing volume of financial information, not all of it reliable. And for some, there is very small margin for error. We should not assume that young people simply need more information. They also need practical guidance, trusted support, and opportunities to ask questions without fear of judgment. Third, what should we do? The OECD recommendation on financial literacy, adopted in 2020, encourages governments and stakeholders to promote financial literacy from an early age and to design initiatives around people's circumstances and their needs. One important way to do this is by embedding financial literacy in formal education. When money-related topics are part of learning, young people are less likely to treat it as a taboo subject and more likely to make it part of everyday conversation in classrooms, at home, and in communities. This is especially important for young people who may be more exposed to financial vulnerabilities. Good financial education can help build not only knowledge, but also judgment, confidence, resilience. And just as importantly, supporting young people also means listening to them. Effective financial educations must be relevant to their experience, to the choices they face, the pressures they encounter, and the questions they are asking today. This is also what makes today's event so valuable. It provides a platform for the members of YouthWise, the OECD's Youth Advisory Board, the opportunity to share their views and bring young people's perspectives directly into this discussion. Ultimately, when young people are empowered to speak up about money, they are better equipped to take informed decisions and to actively shape their financial futures with greater confidence. I am also delighted to welcome Professor Anna Maria Lusardi, Senior Fellow at the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research and Director of Stanford's Initiative on Financial Decision Making. Professor Lusardi's research has helped shape global understanding of financial literacy and its importance for people's lives. The OECD looks forward to continuing to support Global Money Week and to working closely with organizations, institutions, and policymakers participating in this campaign to advance financial education for young people around the world. On behalf of the OECD, I wish you a wonderful and very successful Global Money Week. And remember to have smart money talks. I now have the pleasure of giving the floor to my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Secretary General, for making the time to be with us today and for your inspiring words. Let me now turn to our next speaker. Professor Anna Maria Lusardi is a Senior Fellow at the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research, and she's Director of the Initiative for Financial Decision Making at Stanford University. As you all know, Professor Lusardi developed seminar research on financial literacy, and she's currently serving as the Honorary Chair of the OECD INFA Research Advisory Group. So I'm really looking forward to hearing her keynote speech. So Anna Maria, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody. Good afternoon and good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining us from today. I want to start with a question. What kind of world are young people inheriting? It is, I believe, a world of remarkable opportunity. Artificial intelligence is transforming what is possible in how we work, how we learn, how we solve problems. Technological innovation is accelerating at a pace that previous generation could not have imagined. I see it clearly here in Silicon Valley. We are living longer, which means more years to pursue what matters to us. And young people today are connected, informed, and hungry to take on the challenges in front of them. There is so much to be curious about. And the opportunities, they are there for the curious. They are real. They are within reach. But here is also what I know. A world of opportunity is at the same time a world of risk. Navigating it will require skills. And among the most essentials of those skills, the most essentials and perhaps the most overlooked, is the ability to manage money. Money is everywhere. It shapes nearly every decision we make. The education we pursue, the work we choose, the home we live in, the life we are able to build. Decisions related to money are a crucial part of our lives, from the very first coin a child receives, maybe coming from the tooth fairy, to the retirement saving a worker builds over a lifetime. And yet, for so many young people, for too many young people, the conversation about money are simply missing. The theme of Global Money Week this year is Smart Money Talk. And I want us to hold that phrase close today. We need to talk about money. This week, we are here to do just that. Research and data show us where young people stand today. In 2022, the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA, assessed financial literacy among approximately 100,000 15 years old across 20 OECD and partner countries and economies. It is one of the most comprehensive pictures we have of financial literacy among the young. And as a researcher, I'm always so excited about this data. What did it find? About 1 in 5 15 years old scores at the lowest level of financial literacy. This student can at best recognize the difference between needs versus wants and make simple decisions about everyday spending. 1 in 5. On the other hand, only about 1 in 10 students perform at the highest level, able to analyze complex financial products, to navigate situations they have never encountered before. These figures are just for OECD countries. 1 in 5 at the bottom, 1 in 10 at the top. The rest somewhere in the middle, with gaps that will matter deeply when real financial decisions arrive. And this is not uniform across young people. Financial literacy is lower among those with low socioeconomic backgrounds. In some countries, a gender gap in financial literacy is already forming, not in adulthood, but in the classroom. These are young people at the very beginning of their financial journey, and the divide is already there. We are also learning more. Research in this area is evolving rapidly, and we continue to study the changing landscape so that we can better understand the moment we are in and better inform what needs to be done. Because the world young people are entering, with digital finance, with new forms of credit and investment, with AI-driven financial information, is more complex than it has ever been. But here is something important, and I want to make sure we hold this alongside the challenges. Those young people who do have financial knowledge, they do better. not just in theory, in practice. Young people with higher financial literacy exhibit savvier financial behavior. They make better decisions. They are more resilient. Knowledge makes a measurable, real difference in their lives. We know financial education works. We know it changes behavior. Looking at financial education programs in as many as 33 countries, we found clear evidence of their effectiveness. The question is not whether to have financial education. The question is how to scale it and how we can leap forward. I often think about how financial literacy is today largely a privilege. It tends to be passed down at the dinner table, in households where money is discussed, where parents invest and save, where money is part of the normal conversation of family life. Children in those homes absorb this knowledge early and naturally. But how about the children whose families never had those conversations? The research and data show that sometimes that financial knowledge is not there among adults too. Those young people deserve the same foundation. And right now, too many of them are not getting it. So what can we do? I believe, and I want to say this with convictions, financial illiteracy is not inevitable. It is the result of many factors and obstacles that we should consider to find solution. Global Money Week gives us a chance to come together, to celebrate what has been accomplished over so many editions, and to commit to doing more, to jump ahead. This week is a chance to make the conversation about money open, visible, and normal, so that every young person understands that this is a topic they are allowed to engage with, ask questions, and talk about with the people around them. It is a time to speak up about how much money matters, to make financial conversations a routine part of life, not something reserved for crises or kept behind closed doors. It is time for young people to talk to their peers about money, to share experiences and questions and aspirations. Because the silence around money, the sense that it is taboo, that asking about it is embarrassing, the struggling with it is shameful, that silence is not protecting anyone. It is holding all of us back. It is time to change the conversation, to build good financial habits early, not just to explain what things cost, but to help young people understand what money makes possible. That money is a means to achieve dreams, and that managing it well is one of the most powerful things a person can learn to do. And the best place for these conversations, the most powerful, the most equitable, the most far-reaching, is the school. By adding financial education to schools, we can reach every young person. From the north to the south, from large cities to small rural communities, from family with resources to family with very little. Everyone benefits from this knowledge. Everyone. School can make the conversation about money approachable at every level of learning. They can make sure that no young person is left behind simply because of where they were born or what conversations happened or didn't happen in their home. I have seen what happens when conversations about money reach the young people who need it most. When first-generation students take a personal finance course, they bring that knowledge back to their parents, their siblings, and their communities. There is a multiplier effect. When a girl receives financial education, she doesn't just benefit herself. She becomes an educator for the people around her. She changes her world. We have research confirming this. A study of financial education in schools in Peru found that knowledge spread not just to students, but to teachers and parents. And the parents of lower socioeconomic backgrounds gain the most. That is the power of schools. That is what we are fighting for. I am optimistic, genuinely optimistic, because I see the momentum. More than half of US states now require personal finance education as part of high school graduation. That is a profound shift. Universities are adding personal finance courses and students are filling them. At Stanford, when our personal finance course launched, it filled up instantly with hundreds of students. It has become one of the most popular elective courses. Why? Because students know they need it. They are hungry for it. They just haven't always have been given the chance. And governments are implementing and updating national strategies for financial literacy. The European Central Bank is leading the way to coordinate the effort of national central banks in the European Union to both promote financial literacy and in particular close the gender gap. Thought leaders from the World Economic Forum, Global Future Council on Financial Education have come together to share learnings from around the world and jumpstart solutions. It is impressive that 71 million young people have been reached by Global Money Week across 176 countries over just 13 editions. Let's sit with that number for a moment. 71 million conversations that might not have happened. 71 million young people who were told, money matters. Your financial future matters. You should talk about it. You can ask questions. You are not alone. This is what this campaign has built. This is what we are here to continue and accelerate. Young people are our future. The financial decisions they make in the year ahead will shape their lives, their family, the community they live in, and the economies we all share. We owe it to them to prepare them well. Changing the conversation about money is a critical step, and it is within reach. The knowledge exists. The evidence is there. I see it on this screen too, across this global community. The will is there. Global Money Week can lead the way. Let this week be the moment we recommit to making sure every young person, regardless of where they were born, regardless of what their family looks like, regardless of whether the conversations happen at their dinner table, has access to the financial knowledge they need to build the life they dream for. Smart money talks. Those who know better do better. Let's make sure every young person has a voice in that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Luzardi, for such a powerful speech, very inspirational. And especially thank you, considering that you're joining from the middle of the night in Stanford. We really appreciate it. So the rest of today's event will be devoted to an interactive dialogue between policymakers from the OECD INF and young people from YouthWise, the OECD's Youth Advisory Board. And the discussion will be moderated by Claire Barrett, who is consumer editor at the Financial Times. So Claire, please, the floor is yours. I believe you're muted. We cannot hear you, Claire.
Somebody muted me against my knowledge. I was just saying thank you very much, Chiara, and thank you also to Anna Maria Lasardi. It's always wonderful to hear you speak and being positive about the future for young people when there are so many challenges ahead for them at the moment in the UK and around the world. So we're hoping to address that in our next session. As Chiara said, it's a series of conversations between policymakers who are members of the OECD's International Network on Financial Education and young people from around the world who are part of the YouthWise movement that the OECD has organised. So the whole idea here is that we'll get a global perspective on some of these themes that we've heard about already this morning, be that confidence, the art of having money conversations, dealing with our emotions around money, which is something as a journalist I'm very interested in, who to trust, and also the role of AI. And then when we finish discussing those, we'll get on to some quick fire questions. Now, I should say before we go on, one of the reasons I'm here today is because, as well as being a journalist at the Financial Times who writes a lot about financial literacy and the really powerful role that financial education can have in transforming people's lives, I'm also a trustee of the FT's own financial literacy charity, which is called FLIC, the Financial Literacy and Inclusion Campaign. We're already working in 800 schools in the UK, and importantly, in the workplace as well. We don't want to just stop at schools. We want people to carry on learning throughout their lives. So without further ado, I'm going to turn to my first theme, which is all about confidence. Now, young people's lives, as we've been hearing, are full of financial decisions, from choosing a job, earning their first money, managing student loans, very much in the news in the UK at the moment, and also things like watching out for scams, keeping track of spending, learning how to budget whilst keeping up with their friends. But many young people do not feel confident discussing money-related questions. They don't know who they should talk to about money, or may be afraid to share their money problems. So on this theme of confidence, our first question goes to Magda Bianco, who is the Director General for Consumer Protection and Financial Education at Banca d'Italia, and of course the Chair of the OECD's International Financial Education Network. Good morning, Magda.
Good morning.
Excellent. I'm glad that you're not muted. Now, the question for you is, how can financial education help to address the main barriers that prevent young people from speaking openly about money and asking questions?
Well, thanks a lot, Claire, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I have to say first that we actually often meet young people who are very interested in speaking about finance. But actually, this is not always so. Sometimes there are cultural barriers. Your parents do not speak about money with you or in front of you. And if they do, sometimes they do only with their sons. And even in school, sometimes it might be difficult. Teachers sometimes might think that it's not even ethical to do it. Well, some other times, we know that financial issues generate anxiety. They're perceived as very difficult, percentages or even more difficult math, not easy to grasp. So they just stay away and do not even ask, or they even hide not to know, or even their mistakes. They feel ashamed about the fact that they don't know. So when it comes to money decisions, you might just follow the crowd, as this might be easier. And this, of course, adds up over time with negative consequences. Well, some basic financial education, and of course, we are not talking about becoming an expert in finance. So some basic financial education might really help first in building confidence, especially in girls, and at the same time, reduce the stigma around money. Money as Anna Maria was saying, is really something you may and should talk about, because it can be a source of positive things for yourself, but also for the others around you. Secondly, it helps accepting that you might be wrong sometimes, that you might make mistakes. Though with you, you may actually build knowledge, accepting the mistakes, build knowledge, build improvements. And the third thing is that by encouraging positive financial habits over time, you might create virtuous circles. You understand more, you're ready to ask even more. Well, of course, the best place to do this, as Anna Maria powerfully underlined, would be at school, as this is a place where you ask questions, you debate with your peers, guided by teachers, you develop critical thinking. And this would also overcome differences in family background or socioeconomic context, as Anna Maria was saying. And some studies have actually shown that this actually reverberates into families, into your families. Then to conclude, speaking about money, asking about it is not a weakness, it's a skill. And the sooner we learn to talk about it, the stronger and more prepared we become. Thank you. Sorry, we cannot hear you, Claire. The microphone.
Sorry. I'm saying as a journalist who spends her life asking questions about money, I can attest it does get easier the more you go on. So we're going to hear from our first YouthWise participant now, Kat Lego Koza. Now, I believe that you're Canadian, you're in Canada today, you're studying disaster and emergency management, which looks like a fortuitous career choice, I have to say, Kat Lego, given the state of the world at the moment. But from your perspective, why do you think many young people don't feel confident discussing money-related questions, and what would help people to be more open about their money problems? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Claire. Well, from my perspective, one reason many young people struggle to talk about money is that a lot of us honestly flying in blind. And for me personally, growing up, money wasn't a secret in my home, but it also wasn't really a conversation. My parents worked hard and did their best to provide for us, but things like budgeting, saving, and long-term planning weren't something we talked about regularly. So when I got my first paycheck, my thinking was pretty simple. If there's still money in my account at the end of the month, then I must be doing okay. So looking back, that was a bit of an autopilot mindset. And in today's financial world, that can actually be dangerous. In my experience, many young people are trying to navigate money without really having a roadmap. We're dealing with student loans, digital banking, new forms of credit scams, and a huge amount of financial advice from the online scene. And also at the same time, there's a lot of pressure to look like you have everything figured out, which is really big in our generation. And we have a lot of friends that can sometimes be planning a lot of trips, or like you want to join, but you don't know how to like talk about that too, right? Because you don't have the money to go on those trips. And also you have these big documents, loan documents that you just signed, you don't really know the meaning. And you don't want to admit that you're unsure, but you really don't know much, right? So it's really the financial literacy is really important right now, because with the cost of living that keeps rising, rent, housing, and everyday expenses that don't seem to add up, many young people start to assume that the problem is personal failure, rather than recognizing that the financial environment itself has become harder. So that silence can lead to what I see as a financial paralysis. What would help, in my view, is shifting our mindset from perfection to practice. Money isn't just a math problem, it's a social skill, right? And it's something people learn by talking about it, asking questions, and learning from each other. When we move from just shaming to solving and acknowledging that the financial game has changed for young people, that's when people start opening up. And for me, that's really what smart money talk is about. Thanks.
Absolutely. A fantastic answer, Kat Lego. And I have to say, of all of the work that I've done trying to get people of all ages to open up about money anxiety, the biggest feeling that's expressed is when people say, so it's not just me, and they realize that actually everybody is struggling with these things, which often doesn't seem the case late at night when you're doom scrolling on social media and thinking that you're the only one, as you said, that can't figure this out. So sticking with the theme of money conversations, our second question, I'm going to put this to our Youthwise representative in Hungary, Alexander Zolt Nemeth. Thank you for joining us today, Alexander. So conversations about money, as we've been hearing, can make people feel embarrassed, as in many cultures around the world, personal finance is considered a private or even taboo topic. But from your perspective, how have your family, community or culture shaped the way that you talk about money? Over to you.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. Yeah, you're absolutely right. For me, how I talk about money was largely something I learned socially and was shaped by everything you said, really. Family environment, broader cultural context around me, and just the way young people compare themselves to each other as well. I grew up in a single-parent household that wasn't particularly well off in Western Hungary. And in that environment, I often felt like my money-related questions didn't quite have a place, because raising financial worries outside the family felt shameful because they were money issues, while other questions seemed too small to justify asking for help. And in that context, in Hungary, memories of economic hardship, especially from the Eastern Bloc period and the transition that followed, have remained quite present in the public consciousness. So the prevailing attitude often felt like most people have it difficult or had it at some point, so why would you complain about your financial struggles? At the same time, complaining about general economic difficulties became this common language of shared frustration, though these discussions mostly stayed on surface levels. So, in addition to that, those who appeared wealthier were often kind of discussed behind their backs, sometimes with the assumption that significant wealth must, in some shape or form, come perhaps from questionable means, unless, of course, you're a doctor or engineer, which every grandmother hoped you'd become. So many of my early impressions around money revolved around comparison, even suspicion, and this quiet frustration instead of transparency or empowerment. So by the time I reached middle and high school, many of my peers just seemed to have their finances already figured out. They went on fancy holidays, even with friends, as Katlego also said, and had these newest gadgets and seemed completely comfortable with money. Later, I did realize that many of them had financial difficulties too. They just they weren't visible to me. So what we saw was this kind of social performance of prosperity, and this so-called conspicuous consumption seemed to be encouraged sometimes just as much by parents as by their children. So yeah, because my family was quite open with each other about their finances, I knew very clearly what things looked like at home. But when this met this everyday facade of everyone else, it sometimes made me feel as if I was somehow behind, and these struggles were at least partly my fault. More candid conversations between friends or in school could have been a great counterweight, but anything beyond the surface seemed relatively rare. So this meant that almost all my meaningful money talks happened at home. But at home, financial literacy was also relatively limited. So I mainly inherited these financial habits rather than financial awareness. So for many years, I saved money the way I saw it, in my top right-hand drawer, in a light brown wallet, under a pile of outgrown socks, really. And when I was around 16, I finally moved that money into a bank account, but this underlying logic remained the same, that I should spend cautiously, or at least I should try to, and save whatever remains without any yield, because the idea of investment was hardly a part of this environment that I'd seen growing up. So for me, these experiences really show that the way we discuss and manage money is something we learn socially, And if these conversations remain limited to our closest circles, and if those close circles themselves lack access to financial knowledge, young people will often just replicate habits like I did instead of developing financial awareness and move beyond these inherited reflexes.
Well, thank you very much, Alexander. A very comprehensive answer. I'm going to move the conversation to Frederica Widyasari now, who is the chairwoman of the Board of Commissioners for the Indonesian Financial Services Authority. So moving completely eastward now. Frederica, how can financial education reflect and adapt to different cultural and socio-economic differences that young people experience when they discuss money, as we've heard from Alexander's very good example there?
Thank you, Claire. Hi to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Like in Indonesia, now it's evening already. So thank you for this very interesting conversation. And I'm very grateful to be part of Smart Money Talk. See, listen to Katlego and also Alexander. We can see that young people do not experience money in the same way, right? Their financial attitude are shaped by culture, family norms, education level of the family, socio-economic condition, which means that financial education cannot be one-size-fits-all approach. In some family, discussing money can be sensitive or taboo, especially when household face financial stress, for example. But at the same time, young people today are influenced by social media trends and pressures such as FOMO, like what Katlego also mentioned, that want to have a vacation together and other like that, which can shape their spending and financial decision of young people. Because of this diverse experience, financial education must be designed in a way that reflects young people's real life context and the environment in which they learn and make financial choices. So to make financial education more relevant and effective, to my opinion, several approaches must be applied. First, peer learning, where youth ambassadors and student communities help communicate financial messages in a way that feels more relatable to their peers. Second, of course, digital delivery, using social media, online platform, and interactive tool, since young people today spend much of their time in digital environment. And finally, the collaboration with financial institutions as well as communities, so young people can learn from real-world financial experience such as saving, borrowing responsibly, investing, and of course, avoiding scam and fraud. I can share with you, Claire, and all people here that in Indonesia, these principles are reflected in our programs. Like first, we have a national campaign for financial literacy and education. And of course, we focus on the young people. We conduct large-scale financial education activities across school and universities with a population more than 260 million of people, Claire. So we have already 17,600 financial education activities, of course, together with all financial sectors for students, reaching over 2.9 million participation in Indonesia. We also promote what's so-called peer-to-peer financial education through the Financial Literacy Ambassador Program. We have an ambassador that the program involves more than 15,000 ambassadors across Indonesia, with nearly 47% coming for the student and university segment. So this is also, I believe, is a very powerful tool for young people in my country. And also we strengthen financial education through formal education pathway. Of course, we're still struggling with this because we have to approach so many institutions to have this to be in formal education. And also we develop life cycle based financial literacy materials, like for example, a book for those who are about to get married, Claire. We have this kind of book, and for people in the rural and others. So we have a different kind of society education guidance and life cycle based financial literacy materials. And finally, we expand outreach through digital initiative, I believe all regulators also do the same. So make us easier to reach the young people, because as you said, they most of them they do scrolling, right? So this effort, we aim not only to improve financial knowledge, but also to build an environment where young people feel comfortable discussing about money and are empowered to make responsible financial decisions. That's my answer. Thank you, Claire.
Brilliant. I must get a copy of this book, although I fear it may be too late for me because I've been married for nearly 20 years. But I'm going to move on now to you, Mia. Now, this is a stat from the PISA statistics that Anna Maria mentioned. Around 80% of 15-year-olds say that they feel confident talking about money, but fewer than half of them admit to actually enjoying talking about money. So my question to you, Mia Krankas, I should say you're our Youthwise representative in Norway. You're a graduate of international relations. Thank you for joining us today. Do you think that encouraging young people to talk more openly about money can really make a difference to how stressed or how confident they might feel about their finances? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire, and hello to everyone. To answer your question, yes, I definitely do think that encouraging young people to speak more openly about money can have a real impact on how stressed or confident they feel about their finances. However, I very much think that it depends on how those conversations are framed. Speaking from my own experience, talking openly about money has at times been a huge relief. For example, when I discuss a student loan or debt with friends, I've realized that many of us share the same worries and uncertainties. It's very easy to just assume that everyone else has everything under control, that they know how to budget, they know how to invest, and that they're not worried about that. But when you actually start talking openly about it with friends or colleagues or parents, you understand that a lot of people feel confused or stressed in similar ways. And I think that shared understanding can reduce the feeling of isolation, and it makes financial stress feel less like a personal failure and more like a common life stage. I also think conversations with friends or family can be helpful from a learning perspective. When friends open up about how they budget or how they think about saving, we actually end up exchanging practical advice. So in that sense, open conversations can build both confidence and also financial literacy.
That's a really great answer. Thank you. Oh, sorry, carry
on. But at the same time, like I mentioned, it depends a little bit on how those conversations are framed. I do think that conversations about money can also have the opposite effect if they turn into comparison. Financial milestones are, as mentioned earlier, very visible, especially in your 20s, who's traveling, who's bought an apartment. And I've personally experienced feeling more anxious after certain conversations. For example, when talking to people about saving up to buy an apartment or their first home. I already have friends who have entered the property market. And for me personally, with a huge student loan and relatively limited savings, buying property feels very far away. And in those moments, talking openly about money doesn't really feel empowering. It feels that I'm somehow behind, especially because in your 20s, there can be this unspoken expectation that you should have already reached certain financial benchmark. And I think when conversations focus on achievements rather than realities, they can create pressure rather than confidence. So I think the key is not just encouraging young people to speak more openly about money, but encouraging the right kind of conversations. Conversations that are honest rather than competitive, and conversations that acknowledge different starting points, different family background, different priorities. If we normalize not only success stories, but also debt, uncertainties, and mistakes, then open talk about money can help reduce stress and make young people feel more confident. Thank you very much.
A fantastic answer. Thank you for all of the really important points you've raised there. Now, I'm moving on now to Jose Alexandre Vasco, who is the Director of the Office of Investor Confidence at the Securities and Exchange Commission of Brazil. You've heard what Mia had to say on the issues of how we frame these financial conversations, but how can we relate that back to financial education programs to help normalize talking about money for young people?
Thank you very much, Claire. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you for having me. I think the PISA 2022 data shows something that is extremely important. Many teenagers feel confident about talking about managing money, but not so many young people enjoy talking about money. And that tells us that the barrier is not just knowledge, it's also comfort and social norms. I think this is a gap that matters, and it matters because it suggests that many young people may have individual money management ability, but it still lacks social comfort, vocabulary, and psychological safe spaces to discuss money openly, especially when this topic is emotionally loaded. So financial education programs can normalize money talk when they treat communication as a core financial capability to build vocabulary, confidence, and safe practice, rather than treating money as a purely private topic. But talking about money is a technical competency, not just a cultural preference. As a Brazilian, I can say that Brazilians' culture seems to be one where people talks a lot, but not necessarily about money. So talking about money is a challenge even in countries with more, I would say, talkative cultures. And the problem in financial education schools is that many programs have historically focused on what to know, concepts like budgets, interest, but there's these additional needs, teaching young people how to communicate about money without shame and how to ask for help when they need. I think there are some few principles that can help public authorities and regulators to shape their own programs on financial education. I think one design principle is psychological safety. We can discuss money without forcing personal disclosure. We can use realistic scenarios, anonymized questions, and clear classroom ground rules so students can learn without shame. And I think here, because many programs work with volunteers, it's important to have some guardrails to make sure there's no conflicts of interest when talking about money, when people share their emotions and even some information about their personal finances. The second principle is practice. I think like any skill, talking about money improves with rehearsal, role plays on asking about fees, handling peer pressure, spending, or asking for help when something feels wrong. So a scenarios-based, values-neutral casework could be very important. So to discuss real case, but without disclosure personal information. And a third principle is connecting school and home. I think PISA shows that students who regularly discuss spending and purchasing decisions with parents tend to do better in financial literacy. And that's the case in Brazil. We had a program in 2019 to 2021, and the students that were part of the intervention program were more able to discuss with their parents, and the program, which was focusing on students, also had an impact on families, on their parents. So it's important to as students' environment shape financial literacy, including their family interactions. I think this is an important role for the school. So we should, as my final comment here is, we should be very careful about equity. Socioeconomic background is strongly related to performances, so programs must ensure that students who have less support at home still have trusted adults and safe channels to ask questions. And we know from rigorous evidence that financial education can move knowledge and some behavior. So if we design programs that and we are also able to measure and teach communication, we can make smart money a normal part of growing up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. Some really excellent points there. So this segues nicely into our next topic, which is who to trust when you talk about money. Now, young people are often attracted by potentially unreliable sources of financial information, including influencers on social media. There is good information on social media too, but being able to tell the difference is hard, and they can find it hard to understand who they can trust to get sound information and advice. So I'm going to go back to Alexander now, our YouthWise participant in Hungary. Alexander, who do you trust to listen to about money matters, and what makes a source or a person trustworthy to you?
Thank you. Well, in general, of course, I've always or a long tried to get information from various sources, but I'd assume that's advice everyone will tell you about most topics, and you should try to get information from various sources because, of course, beyond financial discussions in school that we established how crucial they can be, NGO campaigns and workshops, banks' financial literacy projects, academic competitions, news programs, statistics, think tanks, even social media are very important pieces of the puzzle. And during our school years, and I'd say also beyond, and perhaps schools can help just as much with helping youth navigate all these resources as with directly teaching them the necessary information. And I'd argue that these resources could and should also be part of lifelong learning, of course, with varying accessibility and relevance. I'd also like to point out that many credible experts and organizations, institutions, Global Money Week itself, operate engaging social media platforms. So even the most professional and serious voices can be found while doom scrolling. To say something more concrete, I particularly like video essays as well on YouTube. I think it's an amazing genre for today's audience especially. But to find trust amidst all this information, I try to look at not only what, but also why knowledge is conveyed about money, about finances. What I mean is, am I being educated? If yes, by what's the purpose? Am I simultaneously being sold an idea, a product, a service, maybe a future workplace? Is convincing me about money? It is convincing me about something in particular in my life, in the community, in the world, in the speaker's interest, and answering yes to any of these questions isn't necessarily an issue. Everyone will have all their interests and agenda when engaging with others. But for me, the more transparent and consistent these interests are of the speaker, especially when talking about sensitive yet ever-present topics like money, the more trust can be found and then nurtured.
Yes, very good point. And also, whenever you're looking at anyone telling you on social media that you should be investing your money in something, be very suspicious indeed. Definitely the time to ask lots of questions. Now, Magda, coming back to you, how can financial education help young people to identify these reliable sources of information and understand who they can trust to talk to about their personal finances?
Thank you again, Claire. Well, as I was saying before, young people are actually more and more interested in personal finance issues, sometimes more on investing with the idea of, getting rich easily and fast, and maybe doing it through crypto assets. Actually, digitalization and the growing influence of social media are really transforming how financial products are advertised, but also distributed actually, so that more retail investors and young people as well are entering the capital markets. This, of course, brings a lot of opportunities, but as we said, it also brings risks. As retail investors and hence also young people may be actually harmed if platforms intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, influence users towards decisions that are not really aligned with their investment goals or their real risk aversion. And they do so, for example, through gamification, through behavioral design, through social networking features, in some cases using tools that stimulate somehow the attention, like notifications and alerts that try to boost users' confidence. Or they might use influencers, who are actually social media personalities who share both financial information, sometimes they promote investments, without a formal qualification and without being supervised by any regulator. So they influence retail investors by providing informations and opinions, but sometimes also real recommendations through digital channels rather than the traditional ones that are, regulated. So they might receive also direct or indirect remuneration for promoting specific investments. And this somehow creates a conflict of interest because this might not align with the investors' financial objectives, financial goals. And hence, in the end, what Alexander was saying is exactly the way to approach things. Try to uncover the why you are offered something. Is the agent in front of you, be it a person, a platform, or even artificial intelligence, is he or she offering me advice in conflict of interest or not? Is he or she trying to sell me something? And if you're not entirely sure, you should also visit, on the same topic you are searching about, also institutional websites. They might not be as entertaining as the other, but actually, as Alexander was saying, we are actually trying to do our best, but we are certainly independent. And hence to conclude, in a sense, algorithms will push some content at you. Influencers will try to persuade you. Financial education gives you something that they cannot control, the ability to think for yourself. Thank you.
Very, very good point. The ability to think for yourself cannot be underestimated. So our next theme, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. Now, this can massively increase access to financial education and is a way of privately asking questions about money. We've talked before about how it's helpful. I think it was a point that Jose made. It's helpful if students can ask questions anonymously in financial literacy classes, because it can be embarrassing to admit sometimes that we don't know things. Well, AI, guess what, is one of the ways that young people especially are turning to for help. It's reducing the stigma around asking questions, but of course there is also an enormous risk attached, spreading unreliable information. I should tell you, I did an article last year about an FT reader with a pension worth £2 million, so an awful lot of money. And to check if his financial advisor was any good, he asked ChatGPT various questions about what he might be doing with his pension. And surprisingly, the ChatGPT was a lot better than either of us thought, but it did make one big catastrophic error because it didn't know about a change in the law on inheritance tax. And the confident voice in which AI can sometimes tell us the answer to things is also a bit of an issue. So we're going to hear from Vasco first and then from Mia on this one. So Vasco, how can the public authorities ensure that young people have access to trusted sources of financial information in the era of AI?
Thank you, Claire. This is a very important question, and I think not only for public authorities, but also for financial regulators on our regulation. I think just taking a step back, I think it's important to implement a good AI governance here to ensure transparency, explainability, and accountability in all AI-driving financial education tools. So it would also be important, I think it's necessary to integrate AI literacy with financial literacy. So OECD provides a very good framework, AI literacy framework, that helps public authorities to design programs that teach young people to critically engage with, manage, and evaluate AI financial advisors, for example. The school curricula needs to be modernized. The Brazilian government recently, I think last week, published a guidance for schools on how to integrate AI in school curriculum, which is very important. So we're talking about education in general, but of course the financial education literacy on AI needs to connect with these guidelines, not only the standards like the one published by OECD, but also the local regulation. And we need to, in this way, to modernize school curricula to include not only digital financial literacy, but also cybersecurity awareness and other components that are related to AI. And one thing that I think is very important is to protect the youth from digital nudging. When we regulate fintech, we need to prevent the exploitation of underdeveloped executive functions in youth, especially when dealing with speculative assets and gamified spending. And I think perhaps 10 years ago, economic psychology was very important for regulators. IOSCO published reports on economic psychology, but we are now moving, I think, to, we also need to include social psychology. So how behavior can be shaped for different sources or factors. For example, on copy trading, meme stocks phenomena, there are tons of research articles showing how these digital arenas build their own culture. So the technology sometimes shape the social order, and this may be an instrument to fintechs and other financial service providers to nudge young people, and they may be more vulnerable to digital nudging. Of course, we need to support teachers, invest in professional developments that enable educators to use AI as a pedagogical tutor or partner while maintaining human in-the-loop oversight. It should be very important to combat information disorder using AI to detection of financial misinformation and nurture also learner agents, focus on social emotional skills to help young people overcome the stigma of money discussions, fostering confidence need for lifelong financial learning. And my final note, I think it's AI also provides a very important and perhaps critical tool for regulation. We know that there are a lot of disclosures, tons of disclosures about how you need to take into account to make a decision. This is also very costly to financial firms. So years ago, there was a lot of discussion about smart disclosures. And I think perhaps the regulation could take into account the new developments on AI field and perhaps redesign the disclosures in a way that will be more helpful to everyone, especially for younger people. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Well, Mia, from your own experiences using AI, what feels helpful and what feels risky when using AI to weigh up financial decisions?
Thank you very much. I think AI can be an incredibly helpful tool for young people and for people in general when making financial decisions. But with AI, as well as with other sources, it does require some critical thinking yourself. Echoing what you said, Claire, I think one of the biggest advantages with AI is that it feels anonymous and non-judgmental. Money can be a sensitive topic, especially when you're young and still figuring things out. And maybe you feel ashamed that you don't understand taxes, investing, or even how to budget properly. And with AI, you can ask what feels like basic or embarrassing questions without worrying about being judged. And I think that's very important for young people, and it lowers the threshold for learning. And I think many young people, myself included, sometimes hesitate to ask the people around us because we don't want to appear inexperienced. So in that sense, AI can be a starting point for asking these questions about money and finances. I also think that AI can be very accessible and thus very easy for young people to use. Not everyone has easy access to a financial advisor. And even if you do, it might feel like a big step to book a meeting. At the same time, there is a lot of information online, but not everyone might have the time to do their own research. So in that way, AI is available instantly. It's free or for low cost, and it can explain what might be technical terms in an easy language, which is very easy to understand for young people without being experts within finance or economics. At the same time, there are real risks that young people need to be aware of. Like you mentioned, I think the input of personal data is maybe one of the biggest ones. So when you discuss or might put in questions surrounding finance, you are providing these AI platforms with sensitive information such as income, savings, debt, or spending habits. And young people need to be careful about how much personal financial data they are providing and sharing, and also understand that not all AI platforms handle data in the same way. Another risk is that AI might produce incorrect or oversimplified information. It can hallucinate, providing wrongful information, or it can present something in a very confident tone, although it might not be entirely accurate. And that can be dangerous when making financial decisions because small misunderstanding can lead to long-term consequences. And even if AI produce an output which is technically correct, it might be too generic, giving a one-size-fits-all advice. Financial decisions are personal and depend on multiple factors such as your long-term goals, family situation, and even cultural attitudes toward money, which AI might not be fully able to understand those nuances. So to summarize a little bit of what I've said, to me, what feels helpful is using AI as a starting point to learn, to clarify concepts, and to prepare better questions. But what feels risky is relying on it as the financial authority. I think young people should treat AI as a tool for financial literacy, but not as a substitute for critical thinking, independent research, or professional advice when needed. Thank you.
Very well said, Mia. Lots of excellent points there. Now, for our next question, which is about the future, we need to keep to time, please, so that we've got time for the quick fire round at the end. But I'm going to turn now to Kat Lego and to Frederica to talk about the overriding theme of Global Money Week this week, Smart Money Talks. Kat Lego, coming to you first. Looking ahead, what would you like adults, financial institutions, and public decision makers, many of whom will be watching this Zoom call, to better understand in relation to how young people experience talking about money? Tell them what you want.
Yeah, it's really good because we have everyone here assembled, so we can keep it real. So just from a young person's perspective, like people my age right now are facing a lot of pressures to appear, financially put together because social media makes that even harder. And we see a lot of highlight reels, the trips on social media, the investments, the success stories, but we never really see the overdrafts or the stresses behind the scenes like that Maya talked about earlier. But at the same time, the financial landscape we're entering has completely changed. A generation ago, if you had a financial question, you might walk into a bank and talk to someone. Today, everything happens on our phones, apps, platforms, digital credit systems, and many of them designed to make spending feel effortless. But young people are also expected to navigate digital finance, global markets, new financial technologies, often without much guidance, in my opinion. From what I see among my peers and mentioned by Mia and Frederica, is that a one-size-fits-all financial advice doesn't work. A young person supporting their family needs very different tools than someone who has a strong financial safety net. So if there's one thing I'd really want policymakers to understand, it's this. Financial literacy shouldn't be taught like a history lesson. It should be taught like self-defense. Our keynote speaker, Anna Maria, really highlighted young people who have financial knowledge do better. And young people need practical tools to navigate risk, avoid scams, manage unstable income in a gig economy, and build resilience in a financial world that keeps changing every day. And because for many of us, that the goal isn't just learning how to budget, it's learning how to move from financial survival to financial confidence. So that's my message to policymakers. Hopefully you all took that message to heart. Thanks.
Powerful message. I love that. Financial literacy shouldn't be taught like a history lesson, but like a self-defense class. I think that's wonderful. And the final word before our quickfire round to Frederica, what message would you want young people to take away from the theme of Global Money Week this year, Smart Money Talks?
Thank you, Claire. I put a note on what Katlego said. Thank you, Katlego. So I have 4 messages that I would like young people to take away from this year Global Money Week theme, Smart Money Talk. First is, do not be afraid, shy, or even hesitate to talk about money. Open conversation about money with parents, teachers, friends are the first steps toward building financial understanding. When young people talk about money, they learn from each other and become more confident in making financial decisions. Second one is being smart with good behavior and mindset. Another important message is that being smart with money is not only about numbers, it's about behavior and mindset. Financial well-being is built through small but consistent habits like planning expenses, saving regularly, thinking carefully before spending, and understanding the consequences of financial decisions. These habits help young people to manage their day-to-day financial needs and obligations while also building a strong foundation for long-term financial well-being. The third message is use critical thinking in a digital financial world. Today's financial environment is heavily influenced by social media, online platform, and digital financial services, where young people should develop critical thinking, questioning financial information they see online, understanding the risk, and recognizing misleading offers, scam, and unrealistic promise of quick profit or irresponsible borrowing. Young people must check financial advice and be mindful of possible conflict of interest behind certain recommendation. And importantly, Claire, I think they have to know where to seek help and reliable guidance when they face financial problem or suspicious offers. Developing these skills help young people feel more confidence in managing their financial life in increasingly complex digital financial environment. The last one is plan for the future and build financial resilience. Financial well-being is a long journey. Young people should see financial literacy as a life skill that helps them plan for the future and build resilience to financial shock. Life is full of uncertainties, we all know about it, may occur at any time. By developing habits such as having regularly planning ahead and managing financial risks, young people can cope with financial shock and better prepare for both challenge and opportunity in the future. So, Claire, I will end with the saying that every smart financial journey starts with a simple step. Talk about money, think critically, and make responsible choices. If young people can take that message with them, then the spirit of Global Money Week will continue and far beyond than we expect. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. A great conclusion. So we're going to go into our quick fire round now. We've got exactly 10 minutes left before the clock stops. So I'm going to put the same question to our three young people, starting with Alexander, and then Mia, and then Kat Lego. What is the one thing that would make it easier for young people to talk openly about money? Alexander, what's your answer?
Thank you. To me, it would be to recognize and address the psychological barriers, some of which we already discussed, that and where these even come from. Why do we feel ashamed for not understanding certain things? Why are we afraid of being judged for experiencing a difficult financial situation, etc.? And these pressures will inevitably fuel negative feelings about money and the lack of it. Because if you're stressed about or uncomfortable with money in any way, you won't think as clearly. And if you can't think as clearly, then how could you talk about it freely?
Very good, and how that varies so dramatically for individuals. All of the kind of the origin story, if you like, that we're bringing to our emotional relationship with money. So the same question then to Mia, the one thing it would make it easier for young people to talk openly about money. What's your answer?
I think one thing would be to normalize vulnerability around money. If more people speak openly about not just their successes, but also their debt, mistakes, or confusion, stress, it would lower the pressure to have it all figured out. And I think initiatives like this, like Global Money Week, help with this normalization of vulnerability. And also to policymakers, create maybe online spaces where young people can anonymously ask questions, share experiences, and access reliable information. Thank you.
That's a great answer, normalizing vulnerability. I'm noticing a trend, Mia, on social media for people who talk about finance to admit their mistakes more often. This is something that I've always done, but actually people are realizing now that actually it's more authentic to show the bad as well as the good. So finally, to Kat Lego, the same question to you. One thing that would make it easier for young people to talk about money.
For me, it's making money conversations normal. Keep it simple. Like, we don't schedule a meeting to talk about our favorite shows or what we watched on Netflix. We just talk about it. If money felt that normal to discuss, more young people would feel comfortable asking questions instead of trying to figure it out, everything out alone. So keep it simple.
That's a very good idea. Although, as an older person, I'm finding that I need to schedule in a specific time to sit down with my partner to talk about specific money things. We find if we make the time to do it, it's a bit like going to the gym and other good habits. If you make an appointment to do it, you find that you stick with it. So to the policymakers now, we're coming to you in the order that I see you on screen. So Magda, then Jose, and then Frederica. If you could choose one topic of discussion related to money matters today to talk about with your own children, what would it be? And that goes to Magda first, please.
Thank you, Claire. Well, I think it will be about the value of money, its importance, its smartness, to do good things for yourself and for the others around you, but also the risks associated not to use it well, not to know about it. So I think this is a starting point for everything else.
A great question. And then next to Jose, if you could talk about one topic that we've raised today with your own children, which one would it be?
Well, I would choose the true cost of an offer, especially credit and recurring subscriptions. I would compare real examples with my daughter's fees, interest, what happens if you pay late. And I think that would help build a lifelong habit. Pause, ask, and verify. But it's interesting, this question, because I've been working on financial education since 2005 in Brazil, so more than 20 years. I helped to develop the national strategy, the program on financial education, mostly like 20 years working on financial education as a regulator. But I never discussed that with my daughter. So it's interesting. But my daughter is actually very safe when it comes to money, but it's luck, not because of her father. Thank you.
That's a really interesting question, because often our friends, let alone our children, don't really know how we actually earn our money, what we do for work. I think in the pandemic, when so many people were working from home, this was a real eye-opening experience for lots of children. Certainly, I once did a meeting at the Financial Times with my 3-year-old niece sitting on my lap. And she had a play laptop that she used to have out whenever I had to do a meeting, and it was really interesting how she got the idea that this was work and this was something that we did to earn money. So finally, the question to Frederica: what topic of discussion from today would you like to start a conversation with your own children about?
I think it's a very important question, Claire. I have one boy and one girl. I often talk to them about money. That's they have to understand about money, and not just to buy stuff that's not important, and also not to think money as the like how to make money fast, for example, later in the future. But most importantly, I talk to them how to make good decision with money, then get support a meaningful and sustainable life for them and for others as well. See, with this certain amount of money, what they can do, like for helping people as well, and as well as planning for the future. So that's I really like to talk about that with my kids. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much. Okay, so final quick round question. We've got 3 minutes, so 1 minute each, young people. Mia, Alexander, Catalego. What is one question about money that you wish young people felt more comfortable asking? And that goes first to Mia. 1 minute, please.
So I think one question is just if others also feel stressed about money. So many of us from a very young age carry a student loan or financial responsibilities, but we very rarely talk about the emotional side of it. So connecting it to my previous answer about normalizing vulnerability around money, I wish that if we ask others about the stress surrounding personal finances, this would also help normalizing the stress and emotional side of it, and also potentially reduce shame they might feel around having a loan, for example. Thank you.
A great answer. And Alexander, your answer to that one. One question about money you feel that young people felt more comfortable asking.
Yes, for me, it would be something like how much do people actually earn? Because in many places, salary information is quite opaque, and that makes it harder for young people to first understand, but then navigate this whole economic world they're entering. Meanwhile, in some countries, like in the Nordics, there's actually some great tradition of transparency around incomes. And the EU is, I believe, shifting towards more transparency as well. And if young people had access to this kind of information, they could make more informed decisions about educational pathways, careers, their expectations, and just understand the broader structures and inequalities in the economy. And of course, this can be institutionally facilitated, but it also requires people asking these questions.
Okay, and the final word then to Cat Lego. One question about money that you wish young people felt more comfortable asking.
One question would be right now, based on just some personal friendships that I've been talking to. How do I stop surviving and start building? Because a lot of people right now are really focused on getting to the end of the month, and so we just rarely see the bigger question on how to build that financial stability over time.
It's a fantastic question. I wish we had another hour to discuss how we might help you to answer it, but I'm afraid that time is up for this session. But please join me in thanking all of our panel today, our senior level professionals, Magda, Jose and Frederica, and then our YouthWise representatives, Mia, Alexander and Kathlega, who've brought so much energy and also hope to the conversation, echoing what Anna Maria Lasardi was saying at the beginning of the talk. So thank you for joining us today. To sum up, I think the best themes from our talk today were that we need to talk about money, we need to think critically, and only then we can make smarter decisions with our finances. So thank you very much for joining today, and thank you very much to the OECD for asking me to moderate here from the Financial Times newsroom in the City of London. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really an amazing example of smart money talks. We've learned so much. So let me thank, first of all, Anna Maria, Claire, Magda, Vasco, Federica, Mia, Alexander, Katlego, but also everybody in the audience who's been with us, both on Zoom and on LinkedIn. We've seen your comments. We've seen the great conversations going on the side. Thank you all. We do hope that these panel discussions and presentations today gave you some inspiration for your work. And happy Global Money Week to everybody. Have a good rest of your days or evenings or nights. Take care. Bye.